Paul Kagame and Museveni, they were allies, because I told you that, Paul Kagame, he grew up, he stayed in Uganda, under Museveni, And then what they did, they joined the rebel forces that were fighting against the Mobutu Sese Seko. I think you still remember Joseph Kabila. And there was a bloody fight in 1996, that led to the removal of Mobutu Sese Seko in the DRC. Right. Yeah, and then there was another war again that came out in 1990. I think it was between 19... I think Congo, DRC experienced a very serious humanitarian disaster, a very serious political instability. And when you look at that instability, the two wars that culminated, and those wars, they involved many, I think more than 9 countries. Zimbabwe, Namibia, Uganda, Burundi, and all the like. Right. So the genocide, my brother, it has a very serious impact. Even the impact can be felt even up to today when you look at the relationship between the two countries.
Most definitely. But what is the state of bilateral relations between Rwanda and its neighbors, to DRC to be specific, because that's the one that you're talking about right now?
No, the relationship is very, very tense. Yeah, the relationship is very tense, because even the aftermath is still the aftermath of that genocide, because Democratic Republic of Congo have never been very stable at all. Right now, we saw the resurgence. For the past few years, we saw the resurgence of M23, and the M23 are the Tutsi dominated group, and this M23, the DRC. The Rwandan Patriotic Front of Paul Kagame, he's worried that this is the group, no, not Paul Kagame, the government of the DRC, Felix Tshisekedi, is worried that the M23 is causing a lot of destabilization in Eastern Congo. And is also suspecting that Rwanda is the one that is behind the resurgence of the M23 after having been defeated around 2013. So this has made this has created tensions between the DRC and Rwanda. And Rwanda is also accusing the DRC of supporting the FDLR. The FDLR is a rebel group that consists of some remnants of the genocide, some remnants of those who perpetrated the genocide, namely the Interahamwe. So the relationship between the two countries is so tense to the level that at times, the countries are at the brink of an all-out war against each other.
Right. But let's zoom into Rwanda right now. How is the stability in terms of that? Because we have seen Rwanda being portrayed as this, final destination of tourism and everything that is good right now. We are talking about the war that, last that you were talking about the aftermath that is still being felt even up to right now. How is it in Rwanda specifically?
No, but one thing which I have to commend, President Paul Kagame and his Rwandan Patriotic Front, and also some people and the Rwandan community, the Rwandan society in general, is that they have been very successful. They've been successful when it comes to post-war reconstruction, even though it's not 100% successful. But I can say that there's no other country in Africa that I've seen that have really, succeeded in post-war reconstruction and recovery the same way Rwanda did in a very short period of time, between 1994 and and maybe the first 20 years, even up to now. The country have made some socio-economic transformation, that I think if it was another country, I don't think they would have succeeded. So this is a success story. When you talk about post-conflict, reconstruction, I never thought the country was going to come back or maybe rise to rise to the level that it is in right now.
All right, now let's discuss the current humanitarian situation in the DRC due to the violent conflict.
Yeah, the humanitarian situation in the DRC is very horrible. I have to tell the truth. Millions of people have been displaced. Right now, when you talk about the tension in I'm talking about Eastern Congo alone. There are more than 120 rebel groups that are operating. 120 rebel groups that are operating there. It's a concoction of nationalist, ethnic rivalries, and also resource exploitation and all the like. So, imagine more than 120 rebel groups operating in one region. It has caused a very serious humanitarian catastrophe. Internally displaced people running into millions, and also the death of many people. and the destruction of any livelihood that those people can think of, anarchy and despair. Truly speaking, the humanitarian situation inside, Eastern Congo is something that is very, very horrible. I have to tell the truth, and it's one of the worst humanitarian disasters, in sub-Saharan Africa.
I'm wondering what could be done to make sure that the situation is calm. But what role do regional actors such as Rwanda play in the DRC conflict? Earlier on, you talked about DRC. Yeah.
No, true. I told you that when you look at the rebel groups, some of the rebel groups are proxies. For example, when you look at the M23, the M23 are strongly believed to be the proxy of the Rwandan Patriotic Front. Because when you look at the group, it's predominantly Tutsi. And the Rwandan Patriotic Front, the government is a Tutsi, Tutsi-led government. And when you look at some of the leaders of the M23, some of them have some relationship with, with the RPF in Rwanda. For example, when you look at a leader of M23, for example, Sultan Makenga and the likes of Runigo Guerrero and those others in the past, like Boston Tanganda, Lohani Nkunda. Some of them, they are Tutsis and they've got, affiliation with the Rwandan Patriotic Front, even though some of them are Congolese Tutsis. So truly speaking, you can see that some regional actors, state actors such as Rwanda, they are playing a very, very big role inside the Democratic Republic of Congo. Because the Rwanda, they say that they are doing so to protect, ethnic Tutsis inside the DRC. But at the same time, they are pursuing the FDLR, which is a Front for the Democratic Liberation of Rwanda, which is a Hutu-dominated group, which want to go back inside Rwanda and overthrow the government of Paul Kagame. And Paul Kagame does not want that to happen. So regional actors are also very much involved. And also, if you look at a country like Uganda, Uganda is also involved because they say that they are pursuing some extremist groups, the Democratic Front, I forgot the name, I'm sorry for that. Yeah, and also Burundi, all these groups, they are affiliated to some regional actors, and regional actors are at play. Not only regional actors, but also international organized criminal syndicates. They are also operating, exploiting minerals inside the DRC. Mercenaries are also present there. So truly speaking, it's a cacophony of many actors that are, state actors are involved, like Rwanda, non-state actors are involved, like rebels, private military contractors, mercenaries, organized criminal syndicates. Truly speaking, the situation there is something that is not desirable at all.
As we are speaking, I'm wondering what is it that ought to be done? I mean, we are talking about intermediaries, and we are saying all these countries have got their own share of how they contribute to the instability that is happening in Rwanda. In DRC, what is it that will take to stabilize? I mean, we have been talking that African countries, we are trying by all means to end war, but it's like every year, you mentioned earlier ethnicity, you mentioned about resources that is within the countries that really fuel all these things. What is it that ought to be done?
That one is a very, very tricky question when you look at the situation on the ground. Because some of the initiatives that they try, there was a UN mission there. The longest ever UN mission within, I think, 20 years or more than 20 years. Even the largest, about more than 20,000, they've been there. But there's nothing that have come positive out of their presence there, to the extent that the people of the DRC were very, very angry, calling for their departure. And at the end of 2024, they are departing without any tangible. And also there was the East African community, which was the regional the armies, the military from the regional group. They didn't spend a long time there. They also are leaving, or they've left. And then there's also the SADC.
Yeah, we'll get into that one, because you mentioned that all these, all these missions that peacekeeping missions are done by the UN are failing, and they're drastically failures. We are seeing others leaving. Do you think SADC mission will survive the test?
No, that's a very tricky question as well, because when I look at the past missions, because we look at the United Nations, it was a large mission comprising of more than 20,000. And then there was a mission like the EAC, East African Community. It did not last for long because there was no tangible result. But the SADC intervention brigades, they were there in 2013, and to some extent they were also very successful in the fight against the M23. The time the M23 was defeated. But then the resurgence of the M23 backed by a state power, a state actor in the name of Rwanda. So truly speaking, I think the SADC mission there is going to be it's going to be a very tricky mission. And I don't know how they are going to go about it. Because mostly I think the concentration is on the M23. But there are more than 100 rebel groups there.
Yeah.
I don't know how they are going to do. And also, you know, trying to come up with this, because I don't know whether they are going to come up with this to use a strategy of hard military policy without coming up with socio-economic interventions that will try to make people live normal lives again. So I think it's going to be a very tricky mission that we still have to wait and see how it turns out to be. Truly speaking, I doubt if it can, the success of the mission can be anytime very soon.
But do we see the light at the end of the tunnel? We are talking about DRC right now. Is there any hope? What would you say?
Truly speaking, I'm an optimistic person. But when you look at the situation inside the, inside the Eastern Congo, the situation is very gloomy. And when you see the United Nations leaving, the IAC leaving, and now we are pinning all our hopes on the DR forces and the SADC forces.
But what is really at the very core of this tension and everything that really can't be resolved? We've been talking about the peacekeeping missions. We are talking about SADC also looking at this, but we think they're not going to make it. What is it that is really this thing that repels every mission that comes in?
No, because the Eastern Congo, it's a very, very rich region. Each and every mineral that we can think of. You know how kind of contention at the ethnic and nationalist rivalries, resource competition, resource exploitation by different actors. And those actors have become so deeply entrenched within that region. You know, the rebel groups, international criminal syndicates, mercenaries, you know, even multinational corporations that are also working underground, you know, to exploit the resources. Truly speaking, it has become so deeply, the societies within, they become so deeply polarized to the levels, you know, in order to bring peace and stability within that particular region. I doubt if it's something that is going to be very easy. It's going to be very easy. But the core causes, you know, you look at the ethnic rivalries, nationalist rivalries, resource exploitation and competition within the region, and the presence of some actors that are there for selfish interest, truly speaking, and also the lawlessness that reigns there, because there are so many ungoverned spaces.
I was about to ask that what is it that the government is doing within its own space to make sure that they tame all this? You mentioned earlier on different, you know, rebel groups that are within existence within that. What is happening with the law and policy and, you know, making sure that we...
No, the Congolese forces, the national army, the capacity-wise, I don't think they're up to the task of you know, working, you know, successfully to bring law and order. And also the government, this is a very big country. The country that has been ravaged by incompetence, economic mismanagement, corruption. You know, this corruption and economic mismanagement and also this thing, it has fueled the tension. And also now when the Rwandan genocide came into play, it now, you know, caused a lot, exacerbated all this other you know, problems that have been there even during the time of Mobutu Sese Seko. So however, the morale of the Congolese government is not at an all-time high. They are poorly paid, they are poorly equipped, you know, and also the influence of rebel groups within that territory backed by foreign powers. So it's making the Congolese army making it very difficult for them to make any success, to be successful. And also it is also very easy to recruit because some people are very desperate in those countries. So they are vulnerable to be recruited into this rebel groups. Because some communities, they need security. So in order for them to access security where government cannot accord them security, so the very best thing is to seek haven within these rebel groups. So truly speaking, it makes it very, very difficult
right.
for the Congolese National Army.
Most definitely, that is where we had to end our conversation. Thank you so much. I think this is a series of what is happening, as you've already mentioned, that this is the month where we are reflecting back into the Rwandan, genocide. But you mentioned something that, it's gloom and doom as it seems, but we can just only hope for the miracle. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And that is how we come to the end of the conversation that I had with Soli Rakgomo here. And that is how we come to the end of the Tuesday edition of In Context. We've been here since the hour of 2 o'clock. Thank you so much for your time. I'm making way for Benson Putego and Khomozo Mapani coming at 6 on Botswana Tonight. Until we meet again tomorrow, good evening.
What people eat is often influenced by what they have access to. What they have access to is governed by various